Welcome to Neurodiversity at Work, the podcast dedicated to exploring the unique strengths and challenges of neurodiverse individuals in the workplace. I'm your host, Matty and Sarah, and I have an exciting episode for you today. We're thrilled to welcome William Ellis from Work Opportunities Unlimited. WOU is an organization that's making significant strides in supporting neurodiverse individuals and others who may experience disabilities in achieving their employment and community access goals. Will and his team at WOU provide a range of crucial services, include job placement and job training. What sets WOU apart is their commitment to person-centered, customized services. They understand that each individual has unique needs and aspirations, and they tailor their approach accordingly. Well, we're really pleased to have you on the show. It's an honor, to be with you and yeah. So welcome, Will.
Thank you.
Oh, nice to have you here.
Yes.
All right.
Could you first start off by explaining what company, what your role is in the company, in your company, Work Opportunities Unlimited is?
Sure. So Work Opportunities Unlimited, I am the director for the Lowell and Merrimack Valley area.
Yeah.
So I help manage a team of employment specialists that work individually one-on-one with individuals in the community that are neurodiverse or have barriers to employment that are looking for employment.
Yeah.
And I help support them and their clients in ensuring that they're getting, achieving the goals and successes that they have outlined to achieve.
Nice. And what are if you don't mind me asking, what are some examples of that?
Sure. Yeah. Examples of what it looks like. So we meet, our team meets one-on-one in the community with individuals. That could be at an office, a library, a Dunkin' Donuts. We start with just kind of an introduction meeting to get to know the individual and their goals, work on a fresh resume, interview skills to get an idea of where their interview skills are at. And then we work on job development together. We'll support individuals at the interviews.
Cool.
And support them as far as how much or how little job coaching they need to be successful. Yeah.
Sounds like it's a perfect job. A good job. Yeah. So.
Well, it also is a very individualized approach.
It is. Yeah.
For your clients that are coming in looking for help overcoming those barriers, what are some of the barriers that employers face that you see when working with I don't know that everybody's swinging open their doors to hire a neurodiverse population, but can you tell us what are some of the barriers that employers face?
Yeah, for sure. I think some of the barriers that we can face at times are the creativity with how interviews are held, right? So if someone has difficulty in an interview, would they be open and willing to pivot to a different type of interview, like an on-the-job training interview, or more of a hands-on interview, to really see the skill level of a individual that they have to offer. And I think sometimes there are employers that, you know, do shy away from hiring someone when they see a job coach or employment specialist there to support them, unfortunately.
Right.
Would you mind walking us through that, like the process of just being like starting from like step one to like just to like step like fully understand like going off of what you mentioned, like the process of that, how like individuals.
Yeah, how does someone find your organization? And then, you know, if they are reaching out to you, what are some of the processes that they go through?
So the way Work Opportunities Unlimited works is we have different contracts with the state. We also contract with some local high schools. So we have a website, workopportunities.net, and you can fill out a contact, card online that then gets channeled to me if you want to hear more about our services. We also work with state agencies like DDS, MRC, DCF, and have contracts with all of them to get working with us. But really, I love to be able to share what we do with folks when people just want an inquiry or they have an individual, who's transition age, leaving school, going into adult services. I'm always more than happy and welcome the opportunity to share what our services are for those families.
And what ages are you targeting?
Yeah, so we work with individuals as early as like 15, 16, all the way up to no age limit. We get referrals with people post-retirement looking for a part-time job. And because of a certain barrier or neurodiverse diagnosis they have, they want some extra support, and we help them, achieve their goals. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So many times the services get cut off, at a certain age, whatever that age is, 18, 21, whatever. It's nice to know that the doors are open there for people.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
In any walk of life here that need some support. That's great.
How would one approach a job training?
So you mean like if someone was looking for hands-on job training, or are you talking about like orientation at a new employer?
Like both.
Okay.
Yeah. So like if you can explain both.
Sure. Yeah. So because our services and the way we support people are individualized based on the level of support needs that someone has, it really kind of depends. But typically, like on the job training, we do a couple things. We have a couple different programs we do. One which would be like a career exploration or a work assessment, where we work on contacting an employer or a individual comes to us with hey, I want to work in this field. We'll work on identifying places that we might be able to go into to do some hands-on training, and we actually write up an assessment kind of giving feedback onto this is an area where they may need extra support. They maybe had a barrier here with this task. And then if someone's starting like orientation on a job, we support them more up front with making sure that they're understanding the process and working with the managers to ensure that they're getting the right level of training. And so we help support folks with sometimes like the computer training. And then part of our process too for employment to be successful is we write up what's called a retention plan. And that kind of outlines the individual's tasks, every task of the job. How well they do based on our observations. And then if there's a barrier, then we help develop an intervention on how they can be more successful. Because we're all about fading supports. We want people to be successful and independent. And so that's where we really thrive to get people to that place. So.
And is there like a one success story that has kind of like inspired you to keep going?
every day, Matty, there are success stories that I get to be a part of, and it's amazing. So I'll share one.
Okay.
This individual was told by his transition coordinator in high school that in his family he was never going to be able to work, right? It was just something not on the radar. They were referred to us. We started working with them.
Cool.
And they got employed at, relatively like regional grocery store. Has really good family values, great company culture. And he has been there the last 6 years.
Wow.
He is one of their top employees for when they have private events that they host. He's one of the first people that they call to go there.
Nice.
And we have a little bit of a closer connection because when I interviewed, WOU does a field interview with employees when they want to hire them so they can see what a day in the life of someone that works at WOU is like. And he was one that I met and actually gave me a good review, and that's how I got the job. So I always like to share his success because I'm a part of his success story, really. So in that way, and there's so many others. We've worked with people that have written books that did the voiceover for last year's like Special Olympics commercial.
Nice.
We worked with that individual and helped him secure a job at a big like golf supplier because golf was one of the things that he loved. So that's what makes this job so fun and rewarding is you get to be a part of people's success story.
Makes sense.
It's always nice to see people thrive.
Absolutely.
There's nothing better than that. And like I saw Matty a little Facebook post last night. You composed a song.
I did.
For your dog Fiona.
Yes.
Sadly, who's passed away.
Yeah.
And you composed a beautiful song.
Thank you.
I didn't know you were a composer.
I'm getting into it.
Well, I guess you are.
Yeah.
Really fabulous.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
So what are some of the measurements that you're looking at when you go in, and do you evaluate the employer, and how do you engage with them at first? What's the first kind of contact?
So we have a few different ways we do this. We actually have an entire remote business development team that we work with, and then we're also trained as employees on the business development process and how we connect with employers. And we have this massive database internally that we keep all of our notes under certain employers. When managers change, we update contacts, and so you can always kind of see and track who's applied where, what managers we have good contact with. And then a really cool thing that we do is called company interview, where we reach out, share about WOU, how long we've been around, the services we provide, and our business model, and then can go in and meet with the employer. And usually we go and we have a few individuals in mind to work there. That's what causes us to maybe reach out at times to make that connection. And then we'll skill market them while we're there. And then sometimes we'll get a site tour and we'll be able to see the facility. And a really cool part of that is you can almost see where there might be opportunities for someone that they haven't even thought of within the workplace. And that's what we call kind of job carving, right? So then we can say, hey, have you thought about maybe hiring someone to do this job that, these very skilled, technicians are being less productive because they have to stop and do this. Maybe someone who's looking for an entry-level job in manufacturing wants to be able to be a part of this somehow. And that's really kind of how that relationship starts. And then we build what we call reciprocal relationships. So we're at no cost to service and help introduce a neurodiverse workforce to an employer, and we can help bring that clientele to that employer as well.
Makes sense.
And help support them so that they're successful.
And how does I think there's a bigger culture now as you get more people in a company. You've got sort of company culture. How do you start to, create that culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and on all levels, right? Because it is a changing culture, and people have to be prepared. to spend a little more time, to slow down, to interrupt your own workflow a little bit, to, to help someone lift them up a little bit? How do you create that culture or start the wheels rolling for the employer who's looking to do that?
I really think it all starts at the first outreach or the first connection with maybe a hiring manager, where we're kind of bringing to the table, the individuals we support, but also what our culture is and how we want to support them, and try to almost model that for them. And so I mentioned the retention plans earlier. So we also do retention plan meetings on a certain increments of time. And what that is, we sit down with the manager, the employee, and WOU, and go over the retention plan that we've drafted and say, hey, do you have any input? Like, how are things going? Help facilitate that conversation, while at the same time meeting prior with the employee and, our client that we're working with, to help them grow in self-advocacy and be able to speak up for themselves as well, so that we're not doing all the talking. But if there's an issue they want to talk about, they have the opportunity to do that in a supportive room where the manager's there, we're there. And sometimes feedback is received better that way sometimes. Like if we're able to help funnel some of that feedback in a way that we know that our client's going to understand and receive. And it's great. I think those are great opportunities for them to see how we interact, and then they kind of know. And another huge part of what we do is we look for natural supports at the workplace. So whether it's a coworker or someone that really just hits it off with someone from day one, we want to help continue to facilitate and build that relationship, so that if we're not there to, we don't job coach 24/7. So if we're not there, they have a coworker that's like, hey, I'm really having a hard time with this. Can you help me? Or, have you seen the manager? I need to ask them something. Like those types of things, so that they have that connection there.
A little bit of a support there.
Yeah.
Got another question there?
I should.
We could clip that out too. My little inputs. Go ahead, Matty.
Looking ahead and kind of like in future thinking, what are WOU's goals to like, pretty much what are WOU's goals in the future?
Any new initiatives?
To like, if and is there any goals to increase?
One of our more recent initiatives that we've been probably running for a couple years now is a corporate partnership initiative. Okay. So I think we have, I can't remember the exact number, but we have a designated person that's going in to facilitate these corporate partnerships with companies, so that we have kind of direct access to a contact higher up in the company regionally, so that in the, the smaller areas where we operate, we're having a streamlined kind of process of like, hey, we just applied here, we'd like to follow up. Can you help facilitate an introduction with the manager? And then a couple of those actually have on-the-job like training programs. A couple of the employers, which has been really great for people that don't have any work experience, just getting out of school. So we're able to get them trained in all the departments of the store, and they move on from there. And sometimes there's an employment offer after that. So we're always looking to grow those, and always also looking to continue to support more and more individuals every year securing employment.
Nice.
A couple years ago, we branched out into Pennsylvania, so we're in 7 different states in the country, and we provide services in all those areas. And not at my level, but the management level, sometimes looking at where else does it make sense to continue to grow and work with, so our services can be available to others.
Well, certainly, WOU? WOU? What do you do? WOU?
Yes.
WOU. Work Opportunities Unlimited. So, you're a great resource for the neurodiverse community, what other resources are out there to help folks, get job placement, get career counseling, or, anything like that?
I think the most accessible one right now, as far as would be Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission.
That's what you called the MRC earlier.
Yes, yep. It's self-referral based, so you just need a documentation of a documented disability, basically, or a diagnosis, and then you get put into their system. And then there's a lot of resources for, education, for employment, and that's really a great doorway to then get plugged into other, vendor programs. Like, we would be considered a vendor of MRC because we have a contract with them. Okay. So that's probably the easiest step. If someone's transition age in high school and they're connected with DDS, Department of Developmental Services, they can also ask about what connections they have. There are employment opportunities. There's lots of other opportunities that they offer as well. So, and they try to also look at the bigger picture and what's for right now, what's for later, maybe, and so we're not always the right now step for everybody. So sometimes we're the next step for someone.
Yeah, got it.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Fabulous. Any trends that you've seen in employment opportunities?
I think it's extremely competitive right now, and I'm grateful to still say that we're still seeing many of the people we support be employed and chosen, which is great. But I think that's also partly because of the processes that we have in place to get into those employers and have contacts and sort of our outreach business development system. Because otherwise, if you go on Indeed or LinkedIn, you'll see there's hundreds or thousands of applicants for certain jobs, and that can be discouraging when you're doing it on your own. So to have the support, that we provide, is really nice to be a part of and see that we're seeing people get selected for some of those positions.
That's nice. So my biggest barrier as an employer is, and one of the things I find myself always just kind of internally checking my dialogue and my, like HR is back there in my head going, you can't say that, you can't ask that. So how do we have that conversation as an employer to a potential employee who has disabilities? Maybe they've shared some of it, maybe they've shared all of it. How do we bridge that gap? Because there's certainly things that I've gotten in trouble for saying in positions of, when you're in that leadership role, you have to be careful. And so I get nervous about, what if somebody else says something inappropriate or derogatory or, or causes trouble? Because then you're looking at, okay, do they have the wherewithal to bring a lawsuit against us? You know what I mean? So there's a really there's as an employer, how do we deal with insurance costs and just plain old normal human communication and contact and support without, kind of overstepping boundaries?
Yeah, I would say really when we're supporting someone, it's they're an employee just like everyone else is an employee in that way. And so everyone has, workplace violence, sexual abuse, like everyone has policies. And so microaggression. As a general like employee, that's kind of where it starts, but as far as like disclosure is always up to the individual. We will never disclose anything about an individual unless they're asking for us to support them. So that conversation, sometimes it may not come up until they're already started working and they're just, hey, it might be an employer comes to us and say, I'm noticing, we're not seeing this progress that we saw initially. And then we can help support and say, well, all right, would you like to share with them a little bit more about yourself, and we can kind of work together on, increasing support strategies together.
So I guess a general question that I would ask probably, and I've started asking in a particular way, is like, what kind of support do you need from me to be successful here?
Right.
And whether it's, I had a young adult, a young teenager come in, wanted to do some volunteering, and definitely was withdrawn and timid about doing things. And I was like, do you want to use a camera? Like, I had to kind of find what was there. And I had asked, what is it that you need that I can do for you to support you? And he couldn't answer that. But I gave him a camera and I told him what I expected from the shots, and he did a phenomenal job. And I posted it on our Facebook page, and he was so proud. And it was like, but I had to like hunt and peck for it, So it's hard to, and like I say, it's that, how do you have that conversation? How does an employer, like, how do they get the support they need without getting into trouble? And,
Sure. I think it's, as someone who works as a manager, right? In my experience, you're always wanting to build a culture that lasts. You want people to stay, right? You want to retain the good people you have. The same would go to anyone else that you're hiring. Sometimes you have to dig for that gold to see where it is, or maybe ask more questions, just as you would, someone who's not neurodiverse, but still maybe withdrawn or doesn't know how to communicate as well, which is a barrier, but not necessarily a neurodiverse one. It could just be they're more shy, they don't know how to communicate, and I think it just starts with, if you want to build, that relationship with your employees and build a good a structure where people are buying into the vision of what you're doing, they want to be a part. I think it just takes time to get to know them as you would any other employee. Right, of course. So it's an investment, but I think also knowing that WOU support is there too. You could always, there's been managers that have reached out to us and say, I want to be able to give this feedback, or they'll sometimes just talk to us and we'll say, well, no, hold on, like let's bring the individual, your employee, into this conversation. Right. We can be there, but you need to give him the feedback. Okay. I can't give it to him because he doesn't work for me, he works for you. So again, just redirecting some of this idea that, like, you have to tiptoe or you have to be careful, which I totally get. Obviously, there is truth to that. You have to be thoughtful of how you give any type of feedback to an employee. Yeah. But just remembering at the same time, they're employed the same way everyone else is employed there. Right. And that is how we include and are inclusive in culture and society. We can't give like a special set of rules to someone. Accommodations are different. I'm talking about a special, process. You're letting things go with someone performance-wise because they're neurodiverse. And I would say you're doing a disservice to that individual if you can't give them feedback and build in a support strategy to see them go beyond that. Or maybe you just say, hey, you know what? We're going to focus on this area that you're doing really well, and we're not going to worry about this area for right now. We're going to revisit that maybe later on. Mm-hmm. So there's different strategies that I've seen employers do and approaches that they've had. And sometimes I've also seen it just not work out. Right. People get terminated, or it wasn't a good match, and then we look for a better match next time. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And like what skills would one need in order to for it to make happen, for the employee who's getting into the job and the employer.
So so one of the questions I had asked, and I don't know if you and I spoke about it, Matty, but it was, your resume, having a polished resume, and having a kind of a skills assessment. Yeah. What can you do, and what can I expect from, from that individual kind of thing.
Yeah, we have a couple tools that we've used, some just online assessments to and we always help with a refresh on a resume or cover letter. Right. And one of the things that's really important that people don't realize is not all your experience may speak well to the employer you're applying to. So you might want to craft your resume in a way that maybe leaves out a job because it doesn't really hit on the skills you want to highlight, right? Or you recraft that role to highlight the specifics you want to capture for a job. So
and anybody does that
exactly
working with their resume, right? When you're applying for a particular job.
But learning those skills of how to pivot and how to be creative and communicate well. But I mean, I think as long as if you're driven and you're wanting to work, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Yeah. If you are, it's kind of like you get services like this, you get out of it what you kind of put into it in that sense, where you have to be buying into what we're doing to support you for us to be successful, and you'll be successful. We're going to help you get there. But I feel like I couldn't say like what, this or that or the other thing would stand out, because everyone's different and everyone has a different set of skills. And but what we try to do is we really try to look on how to highlight those skills and match those skills with a certain role or employer. So
cool. All right, you have one final question for her?
I'm not sure if it would be a final question, and because it's going so well, I feel like, but I guess if pretty much what's one message you want to people, employees and employers, to get out of? Like, what's one message that you want the workforce to know, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I think it is to be creative and innovative, to tap into resources and individuals that have skills that you may overlook upon first glance. But we believe that all people can work. Yeah. And we want to help change the world of work and see people be successful.
Yeah. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that crosses my mind every now and again is just at some point, as we move through this cultural shift, the terms and the labels will fall away, and we're all just people trying to survive and live and, have a decent life. Yeah. And we're all the same. We are. In our neurodiversity.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I didn't realize how neurodiverse I was until I started working with Matty.
Oh, right.
I'm like, I could have used some of this back in my day.
Everyone benefits from a level of support at different stages in life. And that's just the truth. We all need it at different times. We do. To different levels, but that's what helps us all be successful.
That personal coach or whatever you want to call them, right? Yeah. I mean, it's important. So thank you for the work you do. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, we have a pretty cool environment where we are an educational facility, and we do attract a pretty neurodiverse community in here because they can really. Well, if I'm generalizing probably, but the technology is very intriguing, the focus, the creativity, it really is, it's a great place to come in and learn some skills.
Yeah. So. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, thank you again. It's been a pleasure. So, thank you.
Thank you, Matty.